welcome back to the channel. My name is Carrie with Blues City Pickin', and if you are new here, I am a part-time reseller who goes around to thrift stores, estate sales, yard sales, and tries to find things to flip for a profit on eBay. This is Ching number 38. You'll notice my background is a little bit different. I am currently away from home, but I had some amazing sales the Sunday through Thursday before I put my store on vacation. Before the Memorial Day weekend. So I figured I would go ahead and share those awesome sales with you guys. Since last week was such a slump, I wanted you to know there is hope and you can't come back from a really bad week. So this week I had 25 different orders and I sold 26 items. There was one multi-quantity order. I had $915 in sales, which is amazing for just 5 days for me personally. That's the gross sales, including shipping, tax, everything. The sales price, which is excluding shipping and tax, was about $742. My purchase price for all of these items was $93.48. And my profit was $506.72 for an average of $19.49 in average profit, which is absolutely whiz-bang amazing. Average sale price of $28. My average cost of goods was $3.60. So I had a really great cost of goods this particular week. Lots of things from Goodwill and the bins that sold, a lot of higher dollar items that sold this week. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop right on in. So the first thing that sold was this Kipling backpack. I picked this up at City Thrift back at the end of last calendar year. I paid $5.48 for it. It sold for $38.90, and so I made $27.28 after 135 days. And when I'm talking about what it sold for, it is the sales price that myself and the buyer agreed upon. I do not do free shipping, so they will pay shipping and tax on top of that. And then my purchase price is just my cost of goods, and the gross profit is the sales price, less cost of goods, less any fees that I paid to eBay. And that's what is actually going into my bank account on a particular week. Next item is a vintage 2000 Barbie horse. I picked this up at the Goodwill bins back in the middle of March. I've had a 94-cent cost of goods that particular day. It sold for $9.60, and so I made $6.03 after just 51 days. Next item, this is a Kugi or Kuji. I'm not exactly sure how you say it. They have like the really crazy sweaters that I've seen in the past. This particular item was a dress. It was a long sleeve, long, like knee-length dress. It had the same kind of design as a Kugi sweater. So I picked it up. I did pay $7.34 for this at a Goodwill back at the very beginning of May. I listed it and it sold the same day for my asking price of $79. And so I made $56.10 the same day it was listed. Next item is a toy. This is Tubers and Zots. It is from the early 2000s toy. I had seen it before somewhere along my years. I paid $1.13 for this at the bins back at the end of April. It sold for $20, and so I made $15.51 after 19 days. Next item is something that you should have just seen in my Goodwill bins, already sold, haul, etc. This week. If you haven't watched those, check them out. I will try to remember to link them. This was Super Smile toothpaste. I picked this up at the bins. It was new, sealed. Apparently this is very expensive toothpaste. So I had $1.06 cost of goods that day. I sold 2 of them. These are the Tropical Mint. They were 8 ounces and they sold for $16 each. And so I made $9.30 a piece. So $18.60 for both of them. And those sold the same day I listed it. Next item is a chickpea plush. This was a dinosaur. It was T-Rex, it was ribbed. I paid $1.10 for this at the City Thrift back in March. It sold for $12, and so I made $7.93 after 53 days. Hang tight just a minute. My computer is having a moment. There it goes. All right, so next up is a lacrosse helmet. I picked this up at the bins back in April. I had a $1.13 cost of goods that day. It sold for $29, and so I made $21.44 after 18 days. Don't sleep on some of those bigger items. At my particular bins, they don't charge by weight for some of those hard goods. So for me, my average cost of goods that day was $1.13, but they probably charged me about $1 for it anyway. So don't sleep on those if you can find them. Cascade is a really nice brand of lacrosse gear. If you can find the adult helmets, they're worth much more. This was a child's helmet. Next up is a pair of Fit Flops. These were actually my own personal shoes that I had bought last year. So I have a $0 cost of goods into them. They sold for $39, same day I listed them, and so I made $33.79 in a day. Next up is a Pound Puppy. This was a Tonka Pound Puppy. I paid $1.62 for him at the Goodwill back in May. He sold for $8, and so I only made $4.09 on this one, but I had picked up a couple other plush that day. This particular one, I did not notice that like the strings on its foot were damaged and it was missing its collar, so I went ahead and accepted that $8 offer. And it had been listed, let's see, for 47 days. Next up is a pair of Cork-E's. This was a platform leather sandal. I paid $8.22 for these back in January at Goodwill. They sold for $39, and so I made $26.08 after 123 days. Next up is a set of W.M. Rogers Inspiration Magnolia Knives replacement. This was an extra plate. It was a set of 8. I have $1 into these from an auction last May. I had bought a full set of flatware there. I do love selling flatware. It's very easy once you know the patterns, and I've made some decent money on it over the last year and a half, so I may do a video on just flatware to be on the lookout for that you can make decent money on if you can get it at the right price. This set of 8 knives sold for $28.85, and so I made $23.37. Now, it did take 3 to 44 days to sell, but they take up very little space and they're easy listers. Next up is a bolo. If you know Five Nights at Freddy's, FNAF for short, this is Cupcake. This is the bird Chica's like little toy that she takes along with them. This was an older one. It was from 2016. I picked this up at the bins with a whole bunch of other Five Nights at Freddy's plush. The main reason I know about these is that my oldest kid is a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I think we had seen some videos on the Five Nights at Freddy's plush that are worth a lot, and so I picked up probably 6 or 7. And then, so Cupcake and Golden Freddy were the 2 most valuable. Like I said earlier, I had a $1.06 cost of goods into this particular item, and it sold for $29. So I made $25.28 after just a day. Spoiler alert, the Golden Freddy has also sold, and I'm waiting for payment on it, but that one sold for $84. So I'm really pleased with those returns already. The other one's not worth as much, kind of bread and butter, but still, you can't beat going ahead and picking these up without really knowing which ones were going to be worth a lot. Next up is another tube of that Super Smile toothpaste. This was mint on mint. It sold for $14.50. I had a $1.06 cost of goods, and so I made $9.70 after just 2 days. Next up is a pair of Merrell sandals. I've had these for a while. I bought these at Goodwill back in August of 2024 for $6.99. They sold for $24.61, and so I made $12.04 after 267 days. Next is a great shoe sale, and I have a couple of really nice shoe sales that I actually picked these shoes and another pair of shoes I'm going to talk about in just a minute on the same trip recently. This was a pair of women's Leona black leather platform boots. They are Doc Marten boots. They were really cute. They were a size 7. I did pay $12.59 for these at Goodwill back at the beginning of May. They sold for $75.65. And so I made $48.17 after 16 days, which I was just totally happy about. Next item was something I would not pick up again. I didn't realize it had some discoloration on it when I bought it. This was a Jemmy Shimmy Santa in box. It was untested because the battery was dead. I paid $1.87 for this at a community thrift store down in, I think Merritt Island, Florida, back in November. I accepted an offer for $10 to just go ahead and get it gone, and I made $3.73 after 171 days. Next up is another item from my Whiz Bang Bins haul. This was a vintage 80s Polo Ralph Lauren ribbon belt. It was so cute. It had a D-ring, $1.06 into it for the day. Sold for $19, and so I made $15.52 the same day I listed it. Here's the other pair of shoes that I picked up the same day I picked up those Doc Marten chunky heel boots. This is a pair of Birkies by Birkenstocks. They were clogs, great size, a US 9, European 40, navy blue pebbled leather. I paid $10.49 for these at a Goodwill, and they sold for $64. And so I made $40.65 in just 17 days. Next is another set of Super Smile items. So I had picked up this whole bag at the bins that had like 4 Super Smile toothpaste, 2 toothbrushes, and then a couple other kinds of toothpaste that I have not seen as much action on as the Super Smile. This was a set of 2 toothbrushes. They were new and sealed, so $1.06 cost of goods. They sold for $8, and so I made $4.64 on that. Next is a pair of Chaco's men's sandals. I actually picked these up at, I believe, Plato's back in March for $12. They had not been moving, not a lot of attention on them, so I got an offer for $20 and I said goodbye, and I made $4.87 after just 77 days. Next was another really nice sale. This was a new in box Margaritaville light up string lights, and they had a Bluetooth speaker. I paid $10.98 for this at a local thrift store back in February, but because it was sealed, it was brand new, I felt comfortable paying up for that, and then it sold for $37. And so I made $21.39 after 99 days. Next is, I believe, my best sale of the week, which is saying something since I made $56 on that Coogee dress. This is a Dooney & Burke Santorini leather lizard bag. I found this at the flippin' bins. Like, I have found now, I believe, 3 Dooneys at the bins. I can only assume that Goodwill did not list them or put them in their store because they were dirty, but I have seen Goodwill put some super dirty stuff in their store. I am in the middle of filming, if you don't mind. I just got a few more minutes. So I paid $1.06 for this. Actually, the next 4 things came from the bins, not all on the same day, but somehow I had the same $1.06 cost of goods on it. It sold for $71.10. It was a little bit dusty, dirty inside. I disclosed that. I did wipe it out, and I made $59.07 after just 2 days. Next item is an interlocking mid-century modern like knick-knack shelf. It was dirty, it was grungy, but I wanted to save it from the bins, and since mine doesn't charge me by the pound, it was only $1 roughly. It sold for $15.20, and so I made $11.29 after 15 days. Am I happy with that? Yeah. The boxing process on that one was a little bit clunky because it just didn't fit any of the boxes I had really well. If you do not have a box resizer, 10 out of 10 recommend going ahead and getting one. It has been the best investment I have made besides my Rollo printer in my business. And I will link that down below if you're interested in it. Next up, and the last two items are actually the same item, but they were two different orders. These were Star Wars silicone molds that I picked up at the bins. I think I found 8 of them. Now, I'm not making a lot on each individual one. However, it was one listing, quantity of 8. They are so easy to ship. Pictures were super simple. So I'm making about $5 per. And by the time I sell all 8, I'll make about $40 on something that took about the same amount of time as something that I maybe make 10 to 15 on. So I'm okay with only making 5 each on these because of the multi-quantity listing. Now you've got to do you, and if that's not something you're comfortable with, then don't do it. So these, the first one I sold for $9. The next one I sold for $10. And so I made $5.25 on one and $4.90 on the other. And they both sold within 2 days of listing. So I still have 6 of those left. When I look at where the things came from that I sold, this week was super heavily weighted to Goodwill because of my recent kind of flip over to the bins. I had never been to the bins before the middle of March. It's just not super close to my house. I had not found a way to get out there. I was a little intimidated by it. But my friend Deb, she took me over spring break and I've kind of been hooked, and I usually go once every 2 weeks out to the bins. So it has shown dividends for me. I do have a lot of inventory, but I'm okay with taking lower prices because the cost of goods is so great there and you can source a lot at once. So like the video this week, I had part 1 and part 2. I was at the bins, I think maybe 2 hours. We filled 2 entire carts. I spent $140, about 10 of that was on personal items, so 130 of it for resale. And I have listed, or I've got almost all of the listings done, and I think I'm at about 2,300 in listings. And if I look at roughly what I'll make after fees and all of that, it's gonna be well over $1,500 from that one trip. And that's a 10x profit. That is amazing. That's exactly spot on what I'm looking for. A lot of times I don't take a 10x. I'm just not in the position to always be able to source that way. So if you have a bins next to you, don't be intimidated. There were so many people there just passing over a lot of these things that I picked up. So don't think that just because there's other resellers there that they're gonna be looking for the same items as you. They're not. There's plenty for everybody. You can find stuff. Trust me, as the ultimate skeptic who it took probably a year and a half almost to go after I knew they existed because I was intimidated and I was like, ugh, there's gonna be so crowded, there's so many resellers, just go, give it a go, give it a try. So Goodwill was about 76% of where my profit came from. I had a little bit from home and some from auction, and then 13% from other, so like other local thrift stores. As far as where the profits came from, like the genres, I had clothing, shoes, and accessories coming in basically where it normally does, which is about 50 to 60% of my profits. Household items were 25% this week, and toys were 12%. On my average days on platform, the minimum was the same day. I sold multiple things the same day that they listed, if not within 1 to 2 days. And the maximum was 344, which was for the flatware, and an average of 56, which is actually really low for me. Usually I'm hanging right around the 80 to 90, which is usually what I'm shooting for because I'm looking for roughly 100% sell-through, which is 90 days. As far as like what were bread and butter sales versus not, bread and butter, I define it as sales that I don't make more than $15 on from a profit standpoint. About half of my sales were bread and butter. So I made about I made about $93.70 on those 13 items for an average profit of $7.16. And then I had 13 items that sold for higher than $15. Like, this was a week where I had really nice above $15 profit sales. And it just kind of hit me out of the blue. Some of these things I've had listed for a while, and then some of these things were brand new listings. So I don't know what happened, but I could not be more pleased. So $413 of my profit came from those 13 items with an average profit of $31.82. And it was the shoes, the purses, and the bags that really came in clutch this week. Between the Dooney, the Coogie, the Kipling backpack, the Berkeys, the Docs. It's all things that I never thought I would find, and I have been able to find them over the last 6 months. So don't give up. Keep your head up. Keep plugging along. You will find the things that you are looking for eventually. So I will not be here next week with a video, but I will be back in 2 weeks with a what sold while I was out on vacation and while I was trying to kind of wake my store back up. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, give me a like, give me a subscribe, give me a comment. It really helps me with the algorithm. I am very, very close to hitting 600 subs, and I would love to do that. And I would love for you to be my next one. So thank you so much. Bye.